So Donald Trump's downward spiral continues, and basically what we're talking about today is destabilization as it's happening both at home and abroad. First, look at this. This is Donald Trump's America. Rent strikes. These are the discussions we're having right now. Rent strikes are getting results in the Midwest, but there are risks. This is happening in multiple cities. I want to go over the details of this in a moment. I also want to talk about this today. How Social Security has gotten worse under Trump. Okay, so again, we're talking about destabilization. People aren't paying the rent now, and we're worried about whether or not what's going on with Social Security. If you want to attack Social Security, is the way you do it. Trump and Musk basically attack the workforce who administers Social Security, right? So talking about Social Security, it says it ends the year in turmoil. A diminished workforce has struggled to respond to up to 6 million pending cases in its processing centers, right? So this is affecting millions of Americans. They're defunding Social Security by attacking the workforce that administers it. I'll make sure it's really clear. You also got this 12 million transactions in its field office, right? So you have record backlogs that have delayed basic services to millions of customers, according to internal agency documents and dozens of interviews. Now, I knew that there was turmoil going on at Social Security. I didn't know necessarily it was this large, right? 6 million pending cases, 12 million transactions. That's a lot. And basically, if you have any sort of problem, Social Security, you try to call an office or whatever. Maybe no one picks up the phone, right? Maybe you get on hold forever. You try to go down to the agency. There's really long lines. I've heard this stuff before, but not necessarily to this degree. I didn't know it was millions like what we're talking about here, 6 million pending cases. It's absolutely awful. And then what's going on with the rent strikes? This is the first time I'm hearing it in the national news. Again, this is more than one city. And this is just basically your average American's life. So for those of you outside the USA, this will give you an inside peek of how Americans live. Raytown, Missouri. It says, in the 2 years she lived in Bowen Tower, Cynthia Barlow's apartment has been flooded, been plagued by mold, and been infested with cockroaches. So we're talking about water damage, mold, and cockroaches. This is just regular people live in USA. The building's heat had stopped working, so no heat. When the elevators broke over the summer, emergency workers carried a sick neighbor down 10 flights of stairs. So these are the lives of regular Americans. They live in terrible conditions. I don't know how to put it other than that, right? You got flood, plagued by mold, cockroaches, your elevators don't work, people, your neighbors are getting sick. No heat. Meanwhile, Barlow's rent for two-bedroom apartment unit increased from $9.93 per month to $12.13. Okay, that's what they pay in rent. Growing frustrated, she hung flyers in elevators, hosted potlucks, persuaded a majority of tenants in the 90-unit building to join the Bowen Tower Tenant Union, and stop paying rent until conditions improve. So far, they've won a meeting with the landlord, and a judge has knocked thousands of dollars off the rent debt of one resident facing eviction. This is a really, really big problem in USA. There's a lot of stuff that's connected with this, right? So, you could talk about the landlord. They're facing costs that makes it hard to maintain a building. You could talk about the people who, are renting the building. They're having difficulties with their jobs. You also have natural disaster issues. It's just a bad situation all around. I'll just put it that way. And I don't want to see anyone, living in these poor conditions like this. This is just what it is. I just want to show you what life is like in USA and under Donald Trump. Here's a quote from the tenant. They say, "I got tired of being treated the way I was treated." Okay. The rent strike is part of a strategy that houses activists have started to replicate in mid-sized cities across the country. So this is more than one city. Tenant organizing is more common in liberal coastal metropolises, so like in LA or New York, right? That's more common. But rent strikes in places like Kansas City, Missouri are unheard of. Okay. And then it's saying this is also happening in Bozeman, in Louisville, and also in New Haven. These are just some cities. And I'd be curious if it's happening in your neighborhood, in your area, if you've heard about this stuff. It's the first time I've ever seen this in the national news. Again, we're talking about rent strikes in the USA. I'll give you a different perspective. This is from the landlord perspective. It says, if tenants don't pay their rent, eviction is inevitable, which totally makes sense. I understand that. That's coming from someone who owns, right, minority partner in the firm. Without rent checks, quote, you can't pay your mortgage. You can't pay a staff to fix things. It's a business, right? So everything shuts down basically. And think about this. I want you to understand how destabilizing all this stuff can be. Let's say Social Security checks stop coming. Let's say you risk people's food money. We're talking about the SNAP, or say people lose their jobs, right? And then the whole thing dominoes. We're all connected in this stuff, guys. Sailors, this would be from landlord's perspective. Acknowledge the building's maintenance issues, including the heating and cooling systems, elevators, mold, plumbing, and pests. But he said the owners have spent more than $1 million making repairs since 2024, including $250,000 on plumbing. About 5 units did not have working heat as of mid-December, but residents were told they could be placed in a hotel or compensated while they waited for the window units to be installed. He said they received a similar offer when the elevator stopped working for 5 days over the summer. So I'll just say this: this kind of situations, it's just bad all around. I'll just leave it at that. And I don't want to see any of these problems develop for some people. It's just tough in USA, and it's multiple cities. They tried to do some fixes in LA. They're doing rent control. It says here, landlords say the new limits of up to 4% a year will stifle investment. So there's different sides you can take on this one. I'm just showing you guys what's going on. Also, what's going on is this, and this was interesting. This was yesterday in the Wall Street Journal. Why a $500 steak dinner only yields a $25 profit. Basically, long story short, is that many businesses in USA, and you can talk about the landlords, it's a business like anything else, same with the restaurants, very thin margins, okay? And if you rupture any of the system, right, be it the tariffs or the stuff that Trump's doing with immigration, whatever, it just destroys the balance of a lot of things, and then things get completely out of whack. And it's interesting to actually read the restaurant example, because I think it's similar as the landlord one, right? And it goes all down the line, because remember, it's don't think these things in isolation. You know, if the restaurant's facing difficulty with margins, right, it affects how many employees that they can have on staff, and it affects the prices that they charge customers, and it affects your quality of life. Like everything's connected. And when you look at this stuff, it's actually really interesting. So talking about how much this stuff costs. So they're saying receipt math breakdown out of a party of four's $500 dinner bill at Kingly, Chicago. So, you know, it's a pretty expensive meal, right? 4 people, everyone gets steaks, basically $100 each. So it ends up being $500 total. The restaurant spends $190 on food and alcohol. So that's your input costs there, right? They also says here labor costs is $175. Okay. Then you got your rent, insurance, other fixed costs. That's another $110, and then you're down to $25 profit. So it's actually pretty interesting when you go through like how expensive all this stuff is, and then you get into the whole issue of, you know, restaurants and expect you to tip the workers because they're not going to pay workers, you know, what workers need to live in said city, and the math doesn't work out for a lot of people. And I always tell you guys the same stuff, because like sometimes people say, "Oh, Chris, well, what's the solution?" Well, you invest in your people, and you support people, right? So if you made education affordable, if you talked about like how to make healthcare affordable, if you talked about how to make transportation affordable, right? You know, things like it eases the concerns. If you don't piss off our trading partners and start trade wars, right? It helps businesses that way. There's multiple things that you can do to help people, right? You just want to create a fair system, but right, the way things are right now is like people are just barely treading water, even if they're doing that. And yes, it is a K-shaped economy. So some people like Elon Musk is doing great, right? He's happy. He's saying, oh, you know, work's optional, and we're all going to have robots. You're all going to be rich, right? But if you look at regular people's life, it doesn't feel like that. And then Trump destabilizes even our entertainment there. So this is going on at the Kennedy Center. New Year's Eve concert is latest cancellation at the Kennedy Center. So basically, Trump pulls a dictator move and puts his name on the Kennedy Center, and all the acts are now canceling, which I completely understand. And I'm sure patrons understand this also, right? It is a valid protest when you're just like, frankly, illegally putting your name on whatever you want. That's just what Trump's doing. And this whole thing is so ridiculous. They're talking about any of this stuff. It's just destabilizing. Financial Times had this chart today, basically the Trump tariff stuff, and it's like, I can't talk about every single one of these issues all the time. Right? I'll just show you the chart there. You can see it for yourself. And any of these things that we talk about on a daily basis would be like a massive scandal in any other country. But every day it's just like something new, you know? We just talked about yesterday where Trump's getting some sort of award. He's hanging out with, you know, Benjamin Netanyahu, right? There it is. And you guys, we were talking about this. I'm just showing you again, because I just want to make sure it's clear, because if Trump was really interested in helping regular Americans, they wouldn't spend all their time like, hey, how can we build resort, you know, luxury resorts in Gaza. Like that's what their time spent on. And he's got his family involved, right? So Jared Kushner, who's Ivanka's husband, if you don't know, is at the meeting. He's sitting there right in front on the right. You can see him right there. Trump's real estate buddy, Witkoff, is there also, and just goes on down the line. It's obvious what Trump is interested in. And then you got to get into the world destabilizing thing. So first, I'm just talking about like what's going on at the home for Americans, which is enough to deal with. And I understand why Americans then wouldn't pay attention to abroad, but it's all connected. More. China fires a warning to the U.S. and simulates Taiwan blockade. Trump says he's not worried. Oh, great. Well, no, Trump's not worried. That's great. And you never know what's going on with the stuff behind closed doors. You never know. I just tell you, you never know, because Trump and I guess his people were saying, okay, well, I guess we're attacking Venezuela. Did a whole video on that if you want to get the details on that one. But these things are happening at the same time, okay? China's doing live fire drills around Taiwan, threatening that they send a bunch of ships, planes, bombers, etc. It's as bad as you think it is, and if you want to read through all the details, you can. I'll just say it's not good. Just everything's destabilizing, and at the same time, Trump's doing this stuff on Venezuela. And I just wondered, like, as this stuff's going on at the same time, I just wonder if Trump's like, hey, if we mess with Venezuela and your trade, how about you mess with Taiwan and we'll pretend like it's not connected. It's just happening the same day. Who knows? And then you got this, and this is, I want to make sure this is also clear that in the right-wing medias and the Elon Musk controlled circles, right, they spread, and Fox News and stuff, they spread certain kind of messages because they don't want you to pay attention to the corruption, right? So Fox News is not going to tell you about the resorts in Gaza. They're not going to talk about that. They're going to spread whatever, nonsense, right-wing, misleading lies, whatever it is. And then Vance, then he's trying to work out deals with Musk basically to, hey, Musk, don't do the third party because that ruins Republicans' chance. And in fact, if you side with, me, because I'm trying to be president this next time around, I'm going to help you get contracts from NASA, right? That's basically what it boils down to. Or if you want to make it more blunt, contracts with the U.S. government. So how about we push out whatever messages that we need to get me elected, me Vance, right, after Trump, and then Musk, you end up with a bunch of contracts and tax breaks or whatever. And I just want to make sure all this stuff is clear. And then I get it, guys. I get it more than you know. I see everything. I see all the comments. I do read all your comments. I really do. And I see the crazy Musk fanboys and fangirls, or Trump fanboys and fangirls, however you want to say it, because they're kind of the similar type of audience. They're people who are easily fooled, or they're just bots and liars. Who knows, But long story short, though, is your lives don't get better in USA because you follow these people that don't care about you. Isn't it obvious? I mean, like, guy who's like more worried about awards and building, resort hotels or whatever is not concerned about your Social Security. He could care less. He doesn't even bat an eye. And he's like, oh, Social Security. Well, you know what? We need to replace everything with AI and just fire everybody. I think that's their solution, as if it makes any sense. And remember, Elon Musk is always whispering in your ear, hey, I'll give you a gold award if you do what I say, and robots are awesome, and trust me, bro. And Trump's like, gold award, what's going on? Hey, and then you get this, and just regular people suffer. And it's like, I want to hear from other people around the world, because it's important for Americans to hear this stuff, because sometimes they think that life with Trump and USA is the only way to live ever. And when you hear from people, because we have a lot of members of our community, could be in Norway, some people in France, Canada, UK. We have people in our community in Australia. When you hear about this stuff, like, you'll hear how different their lives are, be it with education, healthcare. The rent right thing, I'd be curious if this happens in other countries where, you live in a building and you got cockroaches, mold, flood damage, elevators that don't work, people getting sick in your apartment buildings. This is what I just want to hear. I want to hear if that happens in your neck of the woods. Like, this kind of stuff would be major scandals, I think, in other countries. But I want to hear directly from you. I'm not going to tell you what happened in your country. I'm just saying what's going on in USA right now. And people are like, if you don't fix it, I'm not paying the rent. But the landlord's like, all right, we've already tried to fix things. We just don't have enough money. And it's just like, everything's just completely destabilized and the math doesn't add up. So that's my thoughts on this stuff. Please be careful out there. And I know this stuff is frustrating, but just to understand you're not alone. And there are other people out there that can see it too, that want to create a more fair system for everyone. So that's my thoughts on this, and I'll catch you all in the next video.